So it's the Monday of Cheltenham week. I'm really looking forward to this week. You never quite know how it's going to go, but I'm always optimistic, and I've done many of these meetings before, so I'm pretty sure I can get something out of it. Will I get all 28 like I did last year? I don't know, but I'm certainly going to try, and I'm pretty confident that I do know how Cheltenham is going to behave. I rehearse for about a week before Cheltenham, looking at previous markets, looking at the data, trying to understand what's going to happen. But of course you can never quite tell what's going to happen from one year to the next, because things do change. And part of my objective in the early part of the week is to understand what has changed and to adapt my trading style to take account of that. I'm out on the bike today. I do this on a Monday now. I like to go out during the week when I can, but I learned from a previous Cheltenham meeting that that's maybe not a good idea. I went on a big 20-mile loop across the downs over here, and successfully got a puncture on the furthest part of the loop and failed to repair it correctly, so got back late for Cheltenham one year. It's quite a few years ago now, because I haven't made that mistake before. And sometimes it's not dry enough to be able to go out on the bike at this time of the year. Certainly wasn't last year, but this year the ground is firming up quite nicely and a lot of my routes are beginning to open up again. So yeah, getting the exercise in and getting well prepared and looking forward to another Cheltenham. So that's day one at Cheltenham over with, and it went pretty well. We had, in the first race of the day, a little bit of the FOMO factor going on with Appreciate It. The price was really coming in quite dramatically, and then it eventually reached a level at which people just weren't willing to back it any longer. So I read that reasonably well. It got a good start to the whole meeting and sort of built on it from there. So I got a reasonable result on the day. It was about sort of what I expected. Volumes in the market were okay. They felt a little bit different. I'm going to have to do some work to understand specifically what was different about those markets today. And it generally sort of went okay. Managed to win on all of those races. And it's a pretty good start to the entire week. We had Shiskin on the second race of the day. That was the red hot favourite. That made it very difficult to trade. I particularly don't like very short prices and small fields, simply because the money gets absolutely stacked up in enormous quantities, and that makes it quite difficult to trade. So I didn't like that race, and the problem that we've got is there seem to be a few of those this week, so I suspect I may struggle on some of those. But yeah, day one, quite happy with that. Now curiously, Wednesday at Cheltenham is the day when I struggle at Cheltenham, or I say relatively struggle in comparison to other results I'm likely to get over the course of the meeting. Hope you get where I'm coming from there. And this Wednesday was no different. We started off with Bob Ollinger. Was it Ollinger or Olliger? Anyhow, very strange movement in the market there. Price was all over the place, difficult to interpret how that was going to play out. And then we had Monkfish that went off at a very, very short price. Difficult to really be able to do much with that. And then when we got to the feature race, we had Politolog, or Politologue, however you wish to pronounce that, was withdrawn right at the start, and that totally scrambled the entire market. So yeah, it was another day that was very mixed up, quite difficult to come to terms with everything that was going on there. Some very challenging markets to actively trade, but nonetheless I managed to do okay, and as generally at the back end of the card I managed to pick up some decent results, and that sort of flattered the total on the day. But that always seems to be the case on a Wednesday. I don't know why that is, but it happened again this year, but still managed to get through all of that, and so I'm reasonably confident going in to the Thursday. So it's going to happen sooner or later, but on the first race of the day, on Thursday, I made a loss. Managed to go right through the card last year without making a single loss, and I blew it today. And it was interesting because it was on Envoy Allen, and I looked at the race and I wasn't certain what to do because it was going to be a short price and there was going to be loads of interest in it. I was sort of teetering a bit about what would happen. And the markets this year at Cheltenham have been odd, in that I've been struggling to get a large number of orders through early on. They just haven't really filled, and that's left me in the position where I'm having to do something relatively late on. So I thought I knew what was going to happen on Envoy Allen. It did happen, but I got caught out by the reversal. So yeah, I screwed up, basically. I made a mess of it, and I really shouldn't have. It should have been a profit. I know other people managed to trade it very effectively. So yeah, I messed up basically and blew my chance of getting all 28 races in a row at Cheltenham this year, which was a little bit disappointing. But the day overall seemed to be okay. But a theme is developing this year in that it's very difficult to sort of get a consistent set of results before or a long time in front of the race. I've said in previous videos that I would trade it for a long period of time, and that seems to be a lot harder this year. I'm just not getting those orders filled, so that's making it a little bit harder, and I'm having to adapt my style to take account of that. The other thing that developed today was, Rachel Blackmore is having a great Cheltenham Festival, and as a consequence there's a lot of interest in any of her rides, so that is presenting opportunities. So yeah, not all bad. But I've definitely blown my chance of 28 in a row. I'll see if I can get 27 out of 28 this year instead. But yeah, a little bit disappointing for that to happen, but it was my mistake. You just have to move on, and that's exactly what I did, and still managed to do a decent result overall on the day. So finally reached the end of the festival. And it generally went pretty well. On the Friday, on Gold Cup day, I performed a little bit less than the prior year, but the majority of that was down to the Gold Cup. And I mean, I got a decent result out of the Gold Cup, but not as good as the prior 2 years. If you look at the last 2 years, I've managed to get £1,000 on just the Gold Cup itself. And therefore, the deficit that I saw this year was more or less the difference between getting £1,000 in the Gold Cup and not getting it, which is what happened this year. But when you look at that, I think that sort of explains one of the characteristics that I saw in the meeting this year, and that was that trying to get money early into the market just wasn't really working. I wasn't able to get those trades through. The money seemed to be flowing through the market, but where that was going, I have no idea. I'm going to look at the data over the course of the next week and see if I can understand that, to try and appreciate what I could have done better, and what happened there. But when I was trading the actual Gold Cup itself, I was trying to get orders in very early on, but I just wasn't getting them matched, and the market would move before I got the opportunity to get them matched. And generally that's not what you see at Cheltenham. The queue size is very large, but typically you are able to get orders through. But I just couldn't do it this year. It just couldn't happen. So as a consequence, I didn't get as much on the Gold Cup as I had done in the last 2 years, but it was a fair result anyway. And overall, on the course of the day, I did pretty well. And the meeting itself went generally well. I managed to win on 27 out of 28 races. So, that was not too shabby, as you would say. So I'm generally pretty happy about how everything went. I mean, it's interesting because if you look at the amount of effort that I put into it, this is what very often separates somebody that does this professionally with somebody that does it casually, because the week before the Cheltenham Festival I was very active looking at prior year results, looking at stuff that I'd recorded, the data, trying to understand what I should be doing. And the week after this particular meeting, I will be analysing as to what happened and why it happened and if I could have done better. And then, the whole meeting itself isn't just like 4 days, it spans about 3 weeks for me. And then when I've analysed all the data, made all of my notes, I will put it to bed for another year. And then next March, I will be looking at the notes again to try and understand what I can do on that particular meeting. And you can never tell specifically what's going to happen every year, because every year is slightly different. But that's why I put so much effort into understanding it. And one of the advantages that I have is because I've done this every year for a long period of time, I can take my notes and my data, compare and contrast it to previous years, and the difference between the two will tell me exactly what was different about the market. And then maybe I can learn something from that as well, which I can take forward not only at Cheltenham, but elsewhere over the course of this entire year. So anyway, Cheltenham went pretty well for me again. It's my favourite meeting of the year. I've only lost, I think, 4 races over the course of 3 years. So I'm pretty chuffed with that. And that's why I put so much focus and effort into Cheltenham. There will be plenty of other opportunities that will be taking place over the coming weeks and months over this particular year. And hopefully they'll all be beneficial. So I hope Cheltenham went well for you. It went pretty well for me, and I'm looking forward now to Aintree.